if I'd have done it differently, I might have built something up as a kind of part-time thing, so that when I did finally kind of jump and go all in, then I wouldn't suddenly have to think about how do I find this many £1,000 every month to survive. So I think that's the big thing, is just that make sure there's some kind of support mechanism you've got in place, so you're not putting yourself under too much pressure. I think that's the first thing. Second thing, and it took me about 8 or 9 years to learn this, is choose a niche.
Cool. So welcome. And so basically just kind of go through and just do an interview. So Beyond W2 is really about empowering people to grab their entrepreneur side and like take actions. And so what I've been doing is like going through and who do I know and respect and love and adore out there that have gone through that journey, and kind of like just go through and get to know you and get to know what your story was and stuff like that. So start off with, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just go shut the door actually, because otherwise the folks are making noise in a sec. There we go. That's better.
Awesome.
So yeah, should be good to go.
Awesome. Cool. So let's start off with just say who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I'm Adrian Savage. I've been an Infusionsoft and a Keep partner for more years than I can remember. And now the main thing that I focus on is all about email deliverability, how to avoid the spam folder, how to double your open rate, and how to be heard by more of your audience.
That is awesome. So where'd you grow up?
So born and raised in just outside Stoke-on-Trent in England, kind of in between Birmingham and Manchester. Moved around a bit, and that is back where I am again now. So I've been here for a good few years.
Okay, cool. So do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I've got a younger brother. He lives in Manchester. He works for the BBC. So one of the things he does as part of his job is commentates on soccer matches. So he's even during lockdown, he gets to travel and go into an empty soccer ground and watch the game when no one else is in there. So he has some bit of fun doing that.
So do you get to go watch the games with him? The matches?
No, I've never been in the commentary box with him. I think I've been to about maybe 4 or 5 matches ever. I think he supports a team called Plymouth, who no one has ever heard of. They're kind of right down in the bottom leagues. And my best memory of going to a soccer match with him was when we were in our teens, and we went. It was a cup match, and they were playing one of the big guys, and they nearly beat them, but not quite.
Okay. And what team do you support?
So I'm not really into soccer that much, but my grandpa supported Arsenal, so those are the guys that I follow. But people often say you can't really be a soccer fan if you support Arsenal, because they never do that well.
Awesome. So what kind of schooling did you do? Say
again, sorry?
So what kind of schooling did you do? So how does the schooling system kind of work in the UK versus, I don't know.
So I think it's in some ways it's very different to the US. I went to 3 schools. So age 5 to age 9 was the first school. Age 9 to 13 was middle school. 13 to 16 was high school. Then I went to college after that, which isn't like US college, because that's still pretty much school. And then I went to university, which is more like college, I guess. And that's where I did a computer science degree. And I guess it all kind of started with me doing becoming a geek and getting into computers, that kind of thing, when I was about 7 years old. My dad worked for the Education Authority in Staffordshire, where we live. And he brought an Apple II computer home, one of those original chunky things. He wasn't doing that well with it. I started reading the manual, showing him how to use it. And I guess that was how I became a geek. And here I am 40 years later, still a geek.
Yeah. So what was your fondest memory of that Apple IIe?
There was a program that this is the first computer game I ever played, and it wasn't much of a computer game. It's called Lemonade, and you have to decide how many glasses of lemonade you're going to make every day and how many you're going to sell. And I was lousy at it, but that and just a couple of years later, I think it was about 9 years old, I wrote my first computer software, and it was published in a magazine, and I got the princely sum of £12, which would be not even $20, but that was the first money I made out of IT. And then it's just kind of, I then had to wait another 30 odd years before I realized what an entrepreneur was, because after going to school, then I took the usual get a degree and then help someone else make lots of money. So I worked in IT and telecoms for a long time before I actually escaped, and ended up doing what I'm doing now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was what my next question was. Really, when did you realize that you were a full entrepreneur? I mean, like, what was that point you're like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur?
There's a bit of irony here, because when the way I did my university degree, then we did 2 years of studying, and then there was a year working in industry. And I remember going for my interview. I ended up doing a year at Xerox writing software for them. And the manager who interviewed me told me that I was entrepreneurial. And it's like, at that point, I didn't even know what the word meant. So there I was doing my stuff. And then it wasn't until, heavens, it's probably just over 10 years ago, I guess, that I had the kind of kick up the ass that I needed to start doing things differently. Because the backstory behind that was my wife Insa, we got married just over 10 years ago. And prior to that, I've been seeing kids from previous marriage quite regularly. Like an hour, I've seen them twice a week. Just after we got married, my ex-wife moved to the other end of England with my kids. So I suddenly went from seeing them twice a week to once every third weekend, and that started to kill me. We went to Insa got given these tickets to a personal development event. Think of Tony Robbins, but maybe the UK's version and slightly smaller. And one of the things they did at this event was the Dickens process, where they say, imagine yourself 5 years in the future, nothing's changed. 10 years, imagine yourself at the end of your life. And I realized that if I didn't do something different, I'd have no relationship with my kids. And it's one of these multi-speaker events where there are all these guys, standing up on stage selling all their different personal development stuff, internet marketing, property investment, all this kind of thing. So we ran to the back of the room, we bought everything, went on all these courses, and 3 months later I handed my notice in at work. No idea what I was going to do, quit my job, and then discovered Infusionsoft by accident. So that's how I kind of made it into the entrepreneurial world, almost by accident. And then realized that my combination of kind of IT geekery and learning a bit about marketing, then I was in the right place to help a lot of the kind of personal development and influencers and coaches and stuff like that in the UK get the most out of Infusionsoft. And that was kind of the start of the journey, I guess.
Okay, awesome. That's it sounds kind of like you had the entrepreneur spirit always there, because like even the first game that you said that you liked on the Apple IIe was the Lemonade game, right? Which is all about entrepreneurism right there.
Yeah, maybe that's what sowed the seed. And I've got a really embarrassing story, because when I must have been about 20, 21, something like that, I started a website in the UK that compared the prices of all the different telecoms providers out there. And I actually gave up on that because the different phone companies in the UK wouldn't share their data with me, and it became too much trouble. And then if we look now, there's so many different price comparison sites out there. I think I created the first one ever. I pulled the plug on it, and I could have, if I'd have carried on with that, where would I be now? So I kind of, if I was an entrepreneur back then, it was a bit too well hidden, but it came out in the end.
So if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself, with your 10 years ago, so yourself 10 years ago, and you get 1 hour to have a conversation with you, how would that conversation go? What would you tell yourself?
Mainly chill the crap out and don't worry so much. I think one of the things that I don't know any entrepreneur who doesn't worry. I think that's the biggest thing, particularly if you're just taking that step out into the void for the first time. It's very, very easy to feel very isolated, very alone, fear of failure, fear of rejection. And I experienced a lot of that fear for a long time. We've all got this negative voice in our head that tells you that you can't do it, you're going to get found out and all that kind of thing. And it's taken me a long time to realize that that's actually a complete load of BS. And as long as you relax, as long as you have confidence in yourself, trust the process, trust the universe, and just get on with what you're going to do, then sooner or later, everything comes good. And I think the irony is, it's only as I have slowed down and done less and focused on one specific thing that it's started to become easy. If I go back even 2 years ago, it still felt like a struggle. And it's only now, it's kind of nearly 10 years on my journey into entrepreneurship, that it's starting to work. So, I think that's the big thing. And also, I guess, to not put myself under too much pressure. Everyone says I'm going to make $1 million or £1 million or whatever in the first so many years. And I think it's too easy to try and think too big. Yes, you can achieve all that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But it's, what do they say? Overnight success takes 10 years.
Right. So how do you deal with failure then? Like, because the way I look at it is like entrepreneurism is not about success, it's about failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And becoming a master of failing, right? So, and then eventually you succeed at something, right? So how do you deal with that?
I get very good at it. I fail as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, there isn't a day that goes by where something doesn't go wrong. But it's, and the trouble is, and this is where I blame schools and all that kind of thing. We are conditioned to see failure as a bad thing. It's almost like they're training you to not be an entrepreneur. They're pulling all that stuff out of you. But once you realize that a failure is no big thing, it just means just one step closer to the next success and just keep going, then, sometimes I still beat myself up for getting something wrong, for screwing it up, because we're all human. But at least I know, I've got enough evidence behind me now that, no matter how much failure I've done, then everything works out in the end. And, it's a bit like Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons. He'd failed for 10 years before that. And when he made it big, his parents say, well, that's great, but what about the last 10 years? And he says, oh, that was research. So, all we're doing is we're just doing research all the time. What doesn't work, what works? If it doesn't work, you move on. If it works, well, guess what? Keep doing it. And then, that's where success comes from. But it is a very, very tough thing when you see everyone else around you, particularly social media, stuff like that. Everyone's shouting about how successful they are, how well everything's going. We compare, it's strange how the little negative voice in your head doesn't compare you with the people that aren't doing as well as you. It only finds the ones that are several steps ahead on the journey. And those are the ones saying, hey, you're not as good as them, all that kind of thing. So, I think these days, most of the time, then it will just be, it's okay to screw things up, because it just means that something else is going to come good in the end. And I'm lucky that I've got enough things that are working now that if something does go wrong, it's not the end of the world, because I've got enough in place that's working that it doesn't matter as much.
Okay. So if you were to meet somebody, they're like, hey, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, what would be like 3 things that you would tell them that they need to make sure that they tick off?
I think the most important thing is to make sure you're not doing it from a bad place and for the wrong reason. The first couple of years when I did this, we ended up living on credit cards, and that's not a good place to be, because if I'd have done it differently, I might have built something up as a kind of part-time thing, so that when I did finally kind of jump and go all in, then I wouldn't suddenly have to think about how do I find this many £1,000 every month to survive. So I think that's the big thing, is just that make sure there's some kind of support mechanism you've got in place, so you're not putting yourself under too much pressure. I think that's the first thing. Second thing, and it took me about 8 or 9 years to learn this, is choose a niche. Because I was trying to do everything for everyone. It's like, even back in 2011, 2012, when Infusionsoft wasn't very well known, it wasn't enough just to be an Infusionsoft consultant, because that was still trying to be all things to all people. So I kind of carried on, for a long, long time, just trying to do anything. And it was only when I found this little niche of email deliverability, which hardly anyone does, and there's a lot of demand for it, that suddenly it's all started to work. So I think that's the second thing. Third thing is, don't undervalue yourself. Everyone always undervalues themselves. The rates they charge are too low. The things that are common sense to them, that are really cool to other people, it's too easy to overlook that. Everything that I'm doing with email deliverability now, I can share what is really simple to me, because I've been doing this for years.
Yep.
But I was speaking at at Icon, the Keep conference last week, and even the simplest stuff that Evan and I were sharing, because we were speaking together, most of the people there said, oh my gosh, I haven't heard of this. I really need to do something about it. So if
Yeah.
that's the simple stuff, then, well, what's the clever stuff worth? Yeah. I think it's too easy just to devalue what you've got and just to give everything away and let people treat you like dirt and stuff like that. Whereas actually, everyone's got some genius in them. Make sure they, be really clear on what that is and make sure there's good enough value on it, because it took me a long time to get my head around that.
So what do you do to, do you have downtime? How do you manage, like, are you like work all the time? Because there's an aspect of like, well, if I'm an entrepreneur, I just work 24/7. I actually feel like I work like every day of the week, or as I usually tell people, is I only work on days that end in Y,
Yeah.
which is basically all of them.
It's
So how do you
a
manage
tough
that?
one.
Manage that?
Because when I was still in corporate world, I worked for Virgin Media for a while. They were kind of the biggest cable TV and telecoms operator in the UK. And there was a very, very smart guy there. I think he ended up running a newspaper or something like that, which is a strange thing. But I remember he did a presentation that I went to, and he shared some really cool things. The biggest thing I remember for that, he said, everything is about balance. And that's something that's taken me a very, very long time to learn, because like you say, it's, particularly if you're an entrepreneur who works from home like I do, you're never, you're always in the office. You can't just, put your work down at the end of the day and go home, because you're already there. And also it's particularly tough for me at the moment because I've got software that has to be supported 24/7. So if I've got someone in Australia that's got a problem as I'm going to bed, then, if it's a serious problem, I might have to fix it. So it's only more recently I've started to manage to actually start putting days into my calendar during the week where I say, right, I'm going to intend to not work at all on this day. Now, being realistic, I'm probably still going to do something, but it means that I can actually plan to go out somewhere, go for a drive, go for a walk, something like that. When we're back in lockdown in the UK at the moment, so I can't take my boat out, but I might go on my boat when it's been repaired and things like that. So it's trying to find time to actually do something just to completely get away from work, because it's like you say, entrepreneurs are prone to burning out because there's always something to do. And I can't remember the last time I had nothing to do. I think it was probably when I was an employee about 12 years ago or something like that, because there's always something. So it is very much about getting into good habits and valuing my own time, really carefully, jealously guarding my time, because, if there was a fourth bit of advice I'd give, it would be is value your time, because, behave as if your time is worth $1 million an hour, and then suddenly you'll start to actually get something out of it. Because even when I'm traveling somewhere or taking some time out, my brain is still active. It's difficult to switch that off. So that's one of the reasons I like going on my boat. It's there's nothing like this in the US, I don't think, but we have very small canals in the UK. The boats are 7 feet wide. My boat is only 19 feet long, so it's a tiny little thing.
Yeah.
And the speed limit is 3 or 4 miles an hour. So when I'm on my boat, it forces me to slow down, and it's just a complete change of pace. But doing that makes a big difference. So the more I can do that, and I'm looking forward to next year when restrictions are lifted and we can go out and do things like that a bit more, because that's what I'll do. At the moment, we're in lockdown this week. I've got it's actually tomorrow, as it turns out. It's scheduled in my calendar, and I don't know what I'll do yet. I'll probably just go out for a drive somewhere and find a scenic spot, park up. Everything's closed, so there's not much you can do. But it's just to get out of the house, get a different change of scene, because that makes all the difference.
Awesome. Cool. Well, how can people get a hold of you?
So lots of different ways. Facebook is where I tend to hang out the most. So that's just facebook.com/Adrian Savage. And I'm also, so going back to my niche in email deliverability, then I've also just launched a brand new email checklist that helps people avoid the spam folder double open rates. Download that from deliverabilitydashboard.com/checklist. There's not even an opt-in box on there, believe it or not. I'm just giving that away for free. But on the same site, you can sign up for newsletters, my free health check, that kind of thing. But those are the two best ways of getting hold of me.
Yeah, definitely. If you take Adrian up on that, because he's my go-to person when I am having deliverability issues. And I think I know stuff, but I get stuck, and this is the person I go to. So definitely take him up on that checklist and get on his newsletter for sure. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Adrian, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you, Rich. Pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Hey, thank you for watching this interview with the Beyond W2 Entrepreneur series. And if you like this content, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, turn on notifications so that you get information about our next upcoming interview. And if you really like this content, really the best thing you can do is share it, and share it with somebody that you know might benefit from the information. And if you want more information, please go to beyondw2.com and join our community there. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next interview.